The Ravens receivers position has become a blank. You fill that in the comment section if you wish. All responses are welcome. But let's not kid ourselves, no matter what your response is. There are plenty of options out there for the Ravens to grab that one more receiver who fills out our 11 personnel groups or provides big play ability or who is a big-bodied target that can win red zone matchups or what, depending on whatever your wish is for that final wide receiver piece, there are options out there. Let's not kid ourselves. Maybe the answer is Devin Duvernay or James Prochet, or maybe it's one of the undrafted free agents. I mean, Emeka Emezie is pretty impressive, especially his 14-catch performance against Clemson. So is Mekhi Polk in a different way. But all of those guys are options. They could provide some production. Duvernay or Prochet could make a big leap in terms of production. I put out a video a few days ago that was designed to preface this one. Well, it was designed to preface a trio of videos. Film studies on Jarvis Landry, Will Fuller, and Julio Jones, who I will start with. Obviously, he's an all-time great. 18 touchdowns in his first 2 years in the NFL, as you can see. A 136 catch season back in 2015. He had 203 targets, incredible usage rate, dozens of unbelievable catches or clutch catches and performances in his career. I think he's had 2 180-yard receiving games in the playoffs. Obviously had the incredible Super Bowl catch against the Patriots that could have clinched the Super Bowl for the Falcons in Super Bowl 51. At least I think it was 51. I'm going to start this video with that catch as a jump-off point from Super Bowl 51. And some of the plays thereafter will be good, where I'm downright impressed by what a 32-year-old wide receiver can do. Simply put, I'll be honest, I came into this film study thinking that Jones would be a bad option for the Ravens. I did. Up front, prior to watching 5 games of his from 2021, my thoughts were thanks, but no thanks. For being 32, only 32, he's shown extremely diminished production in the last 4 years. His total catches have gone down exponentially, as you can see from the stats, from 113 to 99, then to 51 in his last year with the Falcons, I think, and only 31 last year with the Titans. After watching the film, I suspect, and I don't have any proof of it, I suspect that Jones was healthy at the beginning of the year. He had his best game in Week 2 against the Seahawks, where I'll show a lot of film from that game. He looked like Julio Jones that game. All right, so one of the things that obviously always defined Julio Jones was impeccable route running, really high-level attention to detail, and when he changes direction, ability to change speed, if you ask me, and honestly get away with some push-off sometime, or at least I always thought so. I didn't see it as much, although you will see 2 examples of it from 2021. And obviously, unbelievable playmaking skills, ability to make contested catches. From a Ravens standpoint, or any team that signs him, you want a guy who can make plays. You want a guy who can win battles and find the open spots in the red zone, particularly against zone. This was Seattle in Week 2. Again, as I mentioned, probably his best game of the season. This touchdown was called back. Initially, it was ruled a touchdown. To me, it looks like he gets both feet in, one right here. But I think this illustrates what you're looking for if you're trying to sign a Julio Jones. Playmaking ability and catches in some tight space or in the red zone. There's multiple examples of him making plays like that last year. 2 or 3 of them, unfortunately, were called back. Here's another one. It's going to be a zone blitz by Buffalo. Julio Jones is lined up in the slot as a trip set to the right, and Tennessee's protection breaks down. Early in the season, they had real troubles with pass pro. Obviously, Chandler Jones had 5 sacks against them in a blowout win in Week 1. But look, you're rooting for Julio Jones. There's some justification to say this is a catch. Now, I know they reviewed it, but if you're a fan of any team that wants to sign him, if you're like me, you're already thinking about him being on your team, so you're rooting for him. Even though this happened months ago, I'm sitting here thinking, like, how is this not a catch? Here's the end zone angle of it. You'll see the protection breaks down. Tannehill's got a lot of pressure. Ball's obviously underthrown because he's drifting off to his right. Jones was initially behind the coverage. Tannehill did not have an opportunity to get rid of the ball, but look, it certainly looks like a catch from that angle. Looks very similar to the Super Bowl catch, if you ask me. Clearly, there is still some playmaking ability there, even those last 2 plays didn't count. Look, one receiver coach that I got the opportunity to work with had a great saying: when you face good teams or even great teams, there's less time and less space for you to make plays downfield. Julio Jones, being older, maybe a little step slower, maybe there's a little less time for him and the space is a little tighter. In Week 2 against Seattle, however, he was able to take advantage of whatever space there was and make big-time catches like that. He had 6 catches for 128 that day on, I think, 8 targets. Obviously, statistically, his best production in 2021. Every receiver, whether they're good, great, or average, certain times you need things schemed up for you. There's a mesh concept. This play got called back as well. This was Week 7 against Kansas City, a 27-3 win by the Titans. He only had 2 catches. At that point, He had missed 2 games, and I thought he looked like a little bit different guy than he did in that Week 2 win against Seattle. This was a play-action boot concept against the Chiefs. He's off-screen to the offense's left. Definitely executes a little bit of a push-off here. His size and strength allows him to get pretty good separation running left to right. This next one's similar route concept from Jones on the backside, even though the quarterback's in the gun, not under center. And there's some separation here, but you'll see there's a linebacker who gets in Tannehill's window, and that combined with the pressure forces him to throw the football away. In my 5-game study of Julio Jones, there were probably 4 or 5 examples like that last play where he was open, there was some separation, opportunity to get the ball. Tannehill just decided to go somewhere else, or there was pressure in Tannehill's face, and the timing of everything was just totally disrupted. 2 routes from that aforementioned Seahawks game that show there was still some explosiveness there. A vertical route where he kind of veers it to the outside to get that corner outside of his hip, giving Tannehill just enough of a lane to throw it over his right shoulder. A really savvy, smart veteran who could probably still, let me be his agent for a minute. He could still generate 6 to 8 to 10 targets, depending on the matchup, and get you 80 to 110 yards a game. That's me being his advocate, taking kind of a rosy look at things, recognizing that Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and the offensive scheme there at Tennessee kind of pushed him down the order of hierarchy in terms of how many targets he would get per game. The reality is probably somewhere in between. Now, let me get to Ravens-specific stuff. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens see a lot of zone. They used to see a lot of cover 3 in 2019. Now they see a lot of quarters. So we're talking about off coverage, specifically teams like the Bengals and the Steelers. What can Julio Jones do really well right now? In my opinion, he can set up his route break. So whatever his final break is, for example, here in a deep out, he can set it up expertly if the quarterback has enough time, which we presume that Lamar Jackson will in 2022, to find open space and open grass because he understands coverages and where the DB's looking to have leverage. Against man-to-man, there were times last year where he was able to get open as well. He just wasn't targeted. All right, if you want to take a real positive outlook, 3 routes here and against man-to-man. 2 examples will be off-man. A.J. Brown, I believe, is the targeted receiver in all 3 of these situations, but we're going to focus on Julio Jones. He gets open on this backside dig route. Now, am I saying that he can't get open against press man? Certainly not. Here's an example against the Chiefs. Initially looks like he's not open. The ball's going to be thrown to the top side of the screen, but we're focusing on Julio Jones down here at the bottom. Looks like he's well covered, and then boom, stops on a dime. He would have been open if the ball had been delivered. Now you say, why would the ball be thrown there? Of course, you're right. But the point is, a quarterback who has trust with him is going to be looking for him in some of these situations. Can Julio Jones still be that guy to the tune of 80, 90 catches a season? I don't think so. In my opinion, even though he's a veteran, I think he's got to get in camp and get signed with someone early. Obviously, it will make sense for him to be with the Colts. Matt Ryan trusts him and would go to him in some of these pressure situations. I contend that even though he's a vet and he might want to sit out for a while, he's got to earn that trust with a quarterback if he wants to get some of these targets and show, hey, I can make plays when you need me to against off-man, against zone, against press man. Now, I don't know. I suspect that if I was able to sit and watch every single game he played last year, maybe even every game he played in 2020, that he may be less efficient or less effective against press man. 2 examples of him here where it appears as if he has difficulty getting open, even though I just showed you a play 2 plays ago where he was initially covered well and he stopped on a dime, and if the quarterback had enough trust in him to throw it at a particular time, knowing when Jones was going to make his break, I believe he would have been able to make that catch against the Chiefs. Another thing that I think I noticed, but I cannot prove, is there appeared to be a lot of times when he was off the field and the Titans were running the football. I'm not saying he can't block. I saw some good examples of him blocking, but I wonder about the run-pass ratio with Julio Jones on the field versus off. Now, obviously, that might only apply to the Titans in terms of their offense in 2021, but if they made that tactical decision to not run the ball as much with Julio Jones on the field, why is that? All right, he did have a huge impact against the Bengals in the Titans' playoff loss in the division round. Obviously, you see an interception by Jesse Bates there. This is a Z-hide play where the outside linebacker, Pratt, tries to chip him. Julio Jones is still able to get out into the flats. Prior to this film study, I did not remember him having this much impact against the Bengals, and I watched that game very intently. He did make plays on short routes, the Z-hide play that I showed you a couple plays ago. Here's a little snag concept down the field. Here's the patented play action where he's the X up to the top side of the screen. He's going to flash from left to right. In some ways, with his big frame and his ability to push off, or at least frame guys off, running across the field like that, I feel like he was better suited for the Titans offense than it turned out. Obviously, injuries have made him really unavailable the last 2 seasons, and his stats and his production have declined, which makes sense. So how do you keep a guy like this healthy if you sign him? I don't know. I mean, you certainly have to reduce his practice energy output. You certainly have to look at injury prevention stuff. But at some point, the NFL schedule is going to be a grind. It's going to be grueling. Anyone that's ever been involved in football knows it's a long season, no matter what level you're at. At some point, he's going to be expected to play on a Sunday night and then have to turn around and play on a Thursday. Now, maybe with a guy like this, with the injury history he's had in 2020 and 21 and his age, maybe you strategically hold him out like the NBA does with certain guys. I'm not saying I'm an advocate of it, but it could work for a guy that's this high level. If he's able to stay healthy for 15, 16 games, I think Julio Jones can give you 65, 70 catches and 8 touchdowns. I do. Another thing to bring up is the salary structure. I know there's dead money there for the Titans from this year that he's getting paid. I believe there might still be dead money there for the Falcons. So I'm not sure what he's asking for, but to me, it can't be too much. The Colts seem like a good fit. Obviously, I'm a Ravens fan. I would like to see him sign with them, but there's probably going to be some team out there willing to go pay more money than the Ravens are, to be honest, for a guy with this recent and severity of injury history. And I don't mean severity like an ACL or something like that, just severity in terms of the number of games missed. I think you're talking about 13 or 14 games missed in the last 2 seasons. You guys let me know what you think of the film study. First of all, what you think of my breakdown. Feel free to criticize in the comments. That's no problem. What you think of Julio Jones' skills that I have shown you on film, and whether or not you'd like to see him sign with your team, be it Ravens or any other.